Next year, in 2023, it'll mark 30 years since Disney's Bonkers debuted. Which is funny because as we speak right now, 2022, this time frame in particular marks 30 years since Raw Toonage debuted. Raw Toonage was basically Disney's answer to Saturday Night Live. It was essentially an animated Saturday morning variety show which was hosted by a variety of characters under the Disney umbrella. Characters like Launchpad McQuack, Goslin, Ludwig von Drake, you name it, Scrooge McDuck. They even had characters within the shorts on Raw Toonage hosting the show as well. Characters like Bonkers himself, Jitters, a dog who was part of the Bonkers portion of the show, Masupalami himself, and so on. Even Goslin Mallard got in on the act as we speak when it came to hosting. But one of the shows out of that broke off into its own Disney afternoon show, and that was, of course, Bonkers. Bonkers, as I've talked about before in the history of Bonkers videos and essays, essentially was originally a animated cop show. Well, Bonkers was a cop on the LAPD, and his partner was the female Miranda Wright. There's even the original Disney Channel intro to the series floating around here on the YT, YouTube if you will, that shows that. Unfortunately, the original plans, as I've mentioned before, for the Bonkers Miranda version of the show didn't go so well. Behind the scenes, the animation that all the other episodes, all 65 of them, well, majority of 65 of them, came back pretty much disastrous. The animation was done overseas, and they came back disastrous. Only 19 to 20 episodes made it out, and those were aired on the Disney Channel before it got repackaged. That is the Bonkers show. It got repackaged and pretty much became somewhat of an origin story for Bonkers on how he became a cop, and basically who his first partner was outside of Miranda Wright. They did do the transitional episode New Partners on the Block, which basically would explain how Bonkers got Miranda as a partner outside of his original partner. But be that as it may, we need to talk about that origin story itself, Going Bonkers. Now, back in the 90s, Disney would always use the syndicated stations that were airing their content, mostly the Disney Afternoon. They would use the syndication during prime time, mostly on Thursdays or Friday nights, to air 1 hour, if not 2 hour premiere blocks for the new show. In some cases, they would air 2 hours of the 5-part or 4-part miniseries pilot for a show like Tailspin or Darkwing Duck or Chippendale Rescue Rangers, Gargoyles, you name it. The same was with Bonkers. Bonkers pretty much got a 2-hour block. He got an hour block to, his 2-part pilot, which was presented as a movie pilot. And then the other 2 were dedicated, believe it or not, to Donald Duck, because Donald Duck had made a guest appearance in the show. He's the only major Disney character outside of Mickey Mouse to, show up on screen in the series. The only difference, though, is that Mickey was off-screen while Donald was on-screen. So that kind of, I guess you could say, was a big deal. But with Going Bonkers, and I think I've talked about it before, the reason this movie pilot, uncut or cut, however you view it, I have the uncut version, so if I want to watch it uncut, I will. Basically, this probably has to be one of the more darker pilots they've ever done when you really think about it. You might say, well, the ending's not that dark. It's pretty silly and kind of underwhelming. But overall, besides that, it is kind of dark in its, in its presentation. First of all, you have Bonkers, pretty much, going, about his day, greeting fans who are lined up at his mansion, and then going from his mansion, his home, to basically the studio to do another short, basically resume filming on the short that ironically appeared before the Three Ninjas movie in theaters called Petal to the Metal. That's right, it's Petal, P-T-A-L, to the Metal. That's basically what it was, dubbed. But that was the short that was being pretty much used as a example of Bonkers and his friends doing their acting gig, if you will. Pretty much filming a scene. But, like I said, it starts out great and everything. Bonkers going about his day, joining up with his friends to, do the filming, until basically the boss comes in and says, yeah, you're done. You're out of here. All because of the fact that for only 1 week, another studio's cartoon series bounced them out of #1. And let's be honest, in real life sometimes, even back then and even in previous decades before it, studio head honchos do not like the idea that they're going to get bounced from #1 at any time. They'd rather be #1, and if not, they're going to take whatever caused them to go from 1 to 2, and they're going to take it out to the back and put it out of its misery. And that's pretty much an exaggeration of what happened here. Pretty much his boss, W.W. Wacky of Wacky Toon Studios, pretty much cleaned house with Bonkers, interrupted the filming of Pedal to the Metal, kicked them all out, gave them the pink slips, basically ran them out and everything. And Bonkers, he tried his best to, even begging to try to get them to keep their jobs, but Wacky wouldn't hear of it. Even when Bonkers tried to look at it positively, like, no, this can't be right. Wacky has always treated me like a son, only for basically the billboard with his image on it to come crashing down and be replaced by the newest, I guess you could say fab going on at that time, which was Action, Muscle Bound and everything, which is a nice little take on, how things were kind of going the extreme route in the 90s, no matter what media. But yeah, this did start off, like I said, kind of like nice and bright, Bonkers going about his day, and then basically it went dark. It went dark, with Bonkers losing his job. And then basically we get introduced to our villainous character, the Collector, who essentially is a fan of Bonkers and his friends, so much to the fact that he sends his minion, a toon named Mr. Doodles, to go out and suck up via vacuum all of his friends that were fired along with him, and basically take him to the hideout, where he essentially puts them into a machine. It's like a capsule-like machine, and freezes them in place. Basically laminates them in place. Like, they're still alive, they just can't move. They can't move the muscles or anything. Like, they're kind of frozen. Like, they could see things and all that and all that, but they can't move. Like, they're stuck. Basically frozen. As essentially he puts it, laminated in place. And that's pretty dark. Pretty dark. Even the Collector, basically says it himself, to where basically the laminator immobilizes the toons and keeps them preserved in that, immobilization forever. And he plans to do the same to Bonkers. But the reason Going Bonkers is looked at as probably, in my opinion, one of the darker introductions fully to a Disney series outside of, let's say, Gargoyles and the 5-part Awakening pilot movie. The reason this is looked at as one of the darker ones, in my opinion, is because of the fact that Bonkers has to go through a lot of ups and downs to prove his worth as a cop. Mostly the fact that he has to basically win over the trust of Lucky Piquel, who is a cop, a street cop, if you will, who ironically becomes a detective. He's basically patrolling, the parks and everything. And, he's trying to find, he's trying to find this burglar and everything that's mugging people in the parks and all that. And ironically, if not like out of the blue, much to Lucky's chagrin, if you will, Bonkers, just ends up helping Lucky, get the mugger. And by association, crazy enough, gets, promoted to a detective. But what he doesn't know is that promotion comes with a catch. Yes, he's getting his promotion, but he's going to be promoted as a detective to the newly christened Toon Division because the chief, known as Chief Knifke, who's kind of absent-minded, doesn't really kind of grasp the idea that, Bonkers, when Bonkers tells him about all these, accolades, in law enforcement that he's done, and everything through his acting, because basically Bonkers, he's trying to tell the chief, yeah, I've done all this before, I've done this, I've done that, not realizing the chief is not clued in on the fact that Bonkers is talking about acting. Like these roles of being like a Mountie and an officer of other places, around the world, is all based on his acting gig. Knifke basically doesn't realize that and sees it as an opportunity to make some history, and basically tells Bonkers, hey, I've always been considering doing a Toon Division. Would you like to be the first on board? And Bonkers, of course, accepts. And again, that's where Lucky's situation comes into play, to where Lucky's like, yes, I'm getting my promotion, but then sees that the catch of the promotion is, yeah, you're going to be, working the Toon Division with Bonkers, the very person that pretty much, caused you to not only catch the mugger, ironically, or just out of coincidence basically, but basically someone that goes by his own logic and everything. Which, throughout the movie, throughout the pilot, Lucky is very reluctant to even accept, even after the revelation is made to him by his own daughter and wife and Bonkers himself, that Bonkers, resume of being, a cop in all these places is based on his acting, based on him doing this in front of a camera. So, anyway, even though after that revelation and a few ups and downs to what Bonkers considers quitting temporarily because, Lucky is just getting frustrated to no end, with his antics, not really understanding that, hey, this is who Bonkers is, this is how he operates, eventually Lucky does kind of get won over because it takes Bonkers' pet horn, named Toots, who's a tooting horn, but basically portrayed as a dog, to alert Lucky as to what's going on. And much to Lucky's surprise, he's like, how the heck am I understanding this thing? But yet it's telling me what's happening. And from then on in, they go and basically try to save Bonkers' friends and Bonkers himself, because, when Bonkers, basically, considers quitting because, again, Lucky is like reached his limit. He ends up getting captured by Mr. Doodles. And what happens is that, yes, Toots escapes. That's the name of Bonkers' pet horn. Toots escapes. But the collector, before this, shows him exactly what he's done. Like I mentioned earlier, he's captured all the Toons, all Bonkers' friends, and put them into these laminated capsules to keep them preserved and immobilized forever. Like they're still alive. They could see, but they can't eat, drink, or anything, and they can't move. So, Bonkers, of course, not, very happy with this and everything, tries to leave. Bonkers trying, being himself, being like, well, Bonkers, again, Bonkers, again, trying to be himself, looks at the collector and is like, oh, look at the time, gotta go, nice meeting you and everything, and oh, by the way, I'll take my friends with me too. Trying to be very Bonkers-like, but doesn't work. Because the collector basically wants to use Bonkers to finish off his collection. Why you want, and the obvious question I think any fan would have is, why would the collector want to collect Toons? Knowing that, even though they're cartoon characters, they're living beings. They have lives of their own. It's never really explained. It's never really explained. But as predicted, if you've watched it, watched the pilot and everything, Lucky does come to accept the fact that, yes, Bonkers is a little crazy, he's a little weird, but he is a toon, and he probably knows what's going on better than I do. Because the one thing that gets on Lucky's last straw is Bonkers basically telling him that, look, I don't think my friends went on vacation, like you're assuming, just because there's a postcard left behind saying they went to Walla Walla, Washington. No, he's basically saying, look, if my friends, like Fall Apart Rabbit, went on vacation, he would take his suit. He would take his best things, like his best suit and cookies and all that with him. Basically indicating my friends went anywhere on vacation, they would take what they feel more comfortable with them. And again, that's what gets on Lucky's last nerve. Anyway, get back to the point. Of course, like I said, Lucky does come to his aid, accept Bonkers for who he is. And through the confrontation, the battle with the Collector, who uses everything under the sun that comes to toon props and everything, including a prop box with, toon pies, toon shoes, you name it, anvils. They finally do, like I say, they confront him. Well, at least Lucky does. And when Lucky's trying to arrest him, he pulls off the Collector's arm as Collector's trying to pull away. And we see basically a human hand. And it's revealed as they basically, try to get the Collector to prove whether or not he is a toon or not. This is when Lucky takes the advantage to pull off the mask, because the Collector's trying to say, no, I am a toon, I am this, I am that, I am this. And it basically gives Lucky the opening to unmask him. And we see some kind of nerdy, like, geek, if you will, with glasses and everything, who ends up basically seeing his reflection thanks to a mirror by Bonkers. But as he's walking backwards and trying to say, he's trying to still say he's a toon, he falls right into the prop box and straight down. Straight into basically an endless abyss or something. And that's how the first case ends. And they do end up being partners afterwards, even though it looks like Bonkers is going to go back to being a star again. My assumption is he made a deal like, hey, you let me and my friends finish this, that's it. We're done. So at least let them finish the last film, and that's it, they're done. So anyway, that's basically how they became partners. But the reason it's so dark, in my opinion, is because of the setup itself with the Collector wanting to collect living toons and make them basically, basically make them part of his collection. Basically, using a device that pretty much freezes them in place. Like, they can blink their eyes and everything, and all that, and maybe try to talk, but they can't move because they're paralyzed. And that's kind of dark, considering that the Collector wants to keep them that way forever. So, even though the pilot was good, in my opinion, and uncut or not, it is worth a watch. It's on Disney Plus. Mostly the edited version is on Disney Plus. To me, I'm always going to look at it as being, pretty much a catalyst as to how dark, cartoons from Disney, basically the pilots sometimes can get. Because we wouldn't see any, it did set up the fact that the Lucky Piquel episodes of Bonkers were a little bit more darker than the Miranda ones, on occasions. But we wouldn't see another dark version, of the Lucky Piquel episodes until we got to that transitional episode, New Partners on the Block. Because basically, to me, that not only was that dark for its tone and everything as well, but mostly because of the fact that it served to me as a sequel to Going Bonkers. It served not only as a transitional episode of Bonkers going from Lucky to Miranda, but it served as a sequel to the pilot. Because to me, it had the same kind of effects. Like, with the rain, it was pretty much CGI rain. The same there. What was classified as CGI Walt Disney animated feature rain at the time, because it was the kind of featured rain, if you will, when you get a rainy scene in a movie, a Disney animated classic movie, that feels like it's more real than it should be. If you catch my drift. But yeah, overall though, going bonkers. Like I said, it's worth a watch. And it is, when you really think about it, a lot darker, just based on, the villain's, motivation itself, as well as the little tidbits I mentioned here and there, with Bonkers losing his job and everything, and having to win over the trust of his new partner and everything. But again, the one thing that makes it stick out as being dark is the motivation of the villain, because what he wants to do, like I said, is extremely dark. When you think about it, extremely dark. And that's really all I could say on it. But let me know what your thoughts are, guys. How did you feel about the Going Bonkers movie pilot? Do you think it pretty much, based on the villain's motivation, as well as the other things I've mentioned, do you think it was probably one of the darker movie pilots, for a Disney Afternoon series? Let me know down below in the comment section, as well as in the live chat during the premiere. Like the video. Support me over at Venmo at Brian-Roma-2, Cash App at BW Roses 98. Also, check out my podcast series, BW Roses Discussions, all your favorite audio podcast locations except for Pandora, where you will get this and several audio versions of YouTube videos in audio podcast form to listen to wherever you go. Also, check me out at VENMO at BW Roses for content you can't see on YouTube. DeviantArt.com says BVW1979. And at my Teespring store as well for merchandise you can't find anywhere else, just in time for the holiday season. But guys, let me know what your thoughts are. And until then, I will talk to y'all later.